Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. In this session, we will be seeing what are the ancient scriptures that contain the right knowledge about Dharma. How should we approach this vast knowledge so that we don't get caught in the web of words? Instead, we pick the pearls of wisdom needed to live an elevated life. वेदोऽखिलो धर्ममूलं स्मृतिशीले च तद्विदाम् आचारश्चैव साधूनाम् आत्मनस्तुष्टिरेव च. To know dharma, we have to refer to certain specific texts. They are called as dharma pramanam. Dharma pramanam means that which gives the true knowledge of dharma. Vedokhilo dharma moolam. The entire Vedas are the root, the foundation of what we call dharma. Smriti Granthas also propagate the understanding of dharma. Smriti means texts that are classified as Dharma Shastram. Smriti Granthas are the works of illumined rishis. Smriti means that which is remembered. The rishis wrote Dharma Shastras through their Smriti. After Vedas and Smritis, the third place to find the right knowledge of Dharma is by looking at how illumined beings conduct themselves. The shloka says, Acharashchaiva sadhunam. Achara means behavior. Sadachara is made of two words, Sat and Achara. Sat here denotes sadhu. Sadhu here means those who have virtuous conduct. The habits and practices of sadhus is called sadachara. Their behavior and acharana can be a guide to know what is dharma. And finally, the most important place where dharma is understood in its true form is atmatrupti, soul satisfaction. श्रुतिस्तु वेदो विज्ञेयो धर्मशास्त्रं तु वै स्मृतिः ते सर्वार्थेष्वमीमांस्ये ताभ्यां धर्मो हि निर्बभौ. As I mentioned just now, Shruti means Vedas and Smriti means Dharma Shastras. And the four Vedas form the core of Dharma Pramanam. Vedas are anadi, without a beginning, and are considered apaurusheya, meaning not the written work of humans. It has no authorship. It is heard by the rishis at a very high state of prajna, consciousness. Rishis did tapas. Tapas means to focus the mind force constantly on an objective, discarding the comforts of worldly life, becoming heedless to the demands of hunger, thirst, sleep and rest naturally. And throughout their tapasya, deep faith, humility and surrender permeated, that theirs is not a human endeavor alone. The grace of God, Bhagavat Kripa, Anugraha is an essential part to succeed in such spiritual missions. Through such tapas, they attained very high state of yogic capacity, and they became aware of all the vibrations that resulted in creation itself. The very cosmic breath was revealed to them. The cosmic vibrations became audible to them. That is why Vedas are called Shruti, that which was heard. Even in this modern world, in very recent times, there have been mantra drishtas who have downloaded from the eternal fountain of knowledge. One such person is Sri Daivarata, who cognized 450 new Vedic mantras. He was born in 1892. It is not easy for ordinary people to understand the depth of such revelations that are experienced in very high state of inner consciousness. That is why the topics discussed in Shrutis and Smritis are said to be undisputed, never to be argued upon with an intent to deliberately deviate from what is good. They must not be questioned with arrogance, perverseness and prejudices. Somehow, in our cultural fabric, this aspect has percolated as don't question the scriptures at all. simply follow. This attitude must not be adopted to suppress right questioning. But the attitude of not questioning can be the natural state for few people who have surrendered beyond what the ordinary mind can. In the old school way, a questioning mind has to cultivate humility, patience, and some good faith along with reasoning ability. You see, knowledge is infinite and eternal. Ananta vai Vedaha. In fact, the entire Vedas available here in Sanskrit is only a part of the total knowledge. Padosya Vishwa Bhutani Tripadasya Amritam Divi, says the Vedas. The manifested universe we see and know is only 1/4 of the entirety. The remaining 3/4 is eternal, and its vast expanse is upward and in the divine realm of light beyond the reach of ordinary human mind. Most of the root literature that is there in this corpus of scriptures is in Sanskrit and is in the form of shlokas and sutras. In fact, the very language Sanskrit is called Deva Bhasha, the language of gods. The definition of a sutra will help you understand the power of the language. Alpaksharam asandigdham saravat vishvato mukham astobham manavadyancha sutram sutravido viduhu. Here is the lakshana of a sutra, the characteristic of a sutra. It says a sutra is alpaksharam, meaning it is concise. Asandigdham, without any doubt, that is unambiguous. It should have a singular meaning that is conveyed. Saravat, meaningful. That is, a sutra should not have irrelevant or unwanted information. Vishvato mukham, it must be properly applicable, versatile. If you look at it from any angle, it should remain meaningful. Astobham, it must be devoid of stobhaksharas, kind of fillers that are used in writing, gap filler characters like O, A, etc. Anavadyam, it must be irrefutable. Na avadyam, that which cannot be refuted. A sutra cannot be proved incorrect, that is anavadyam. Now look at it. A sutra is concise, it must be unambiguous, it must be meaningful, it must be properly applicable, it must be devoid of gap filler characters, and it cannot be proved incorrect. All this is packed into small sentences, small one-liners, like say take from Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. It says, Yogash Chitta Vritti Nirodha. This is a very concise representation of what is yoga. But volumes have been written about this one single sutra of Patanjali. Now, because the root scriptures are like this, very cryptic, they are short, they are versatile in application, the root scriptures have been interpreted in many ways. Every interpretation is surely human work, suiting a certain school of thought. And this forms the secondary layer of scriptural texts. Each school of thought again took the moola, the root corpus, and interpreted it to highlight their perspective. One truth can be said in many ways, right? Just as one sun can get reflected in different water bodies. But if we look at the main structure of the scriptural corpus here, from the Vedas, many abodes of knowledge have emerged. There are totally 14 abodes of knowledge. Knowledge is enshrined in these. That is why they are called Vidyasthanani. There are 14 Vidyasthanani. Let me go through them one after another. Firstly, the 4 Vedas, Rig, Yajur, Sama and Atharva Veda. Every Veda again has 4 parts to itself, Samhita, Brahmana, Aranyaka and Upanishads. Based on the learning traditions, each Vedas are supposed to have many shakhas, meaning branches of learning. But today not all are surviving. You can see more details about each of the Vedas in the slide shown. If the entire Vedas is visualized as a Veda Purusha, then 6 of his parts have to be thoroughly known in order to understand what is in the Vedas. These are called the 6 Vedangas, the 6 limbs of the Veda Purusha, which are counted next in the 14 Vidyasthanani, 4 Vedas and 6 Vedangas. Shiksha is considered the nose of the Veda Purusha. The life center of Vedas is through the right pronunciation of words, and Shiksha deals with right pronunciation. Vyakarana is the mouth of the Veda Purusha. It deals with Vedic grammar. Chanda are the feet of the Veda Purusha. Chanda means meter. Every chandas is a specific design of syllables that has specific effects. It is through this meter that the Veda mantras travel. That is why Chanda are called the feet of the Veda Purusha. Nirukta represents the ears of the Veda Purusha. Nirukta means Vedic dictionary. It tells the meaning of rare and uncommon words used in the Vedas. Jyotishya are the eyes of the Veda Purusha. All matters of time, space and cosmic events that are required to perceive the insight of Vedas requires the study of Jyotishya. Kalpa, arms of the Veda Purusha. It has the details of how to take Vedic action. With this end, the description of the 6 Vedangas. So far, we have covered 4 Vedas, 6 Vedangas, making 10 Vidyasthanani. The remaining 4 out of the 14 are Mimamsa, Nyaya Shastra, Puranas and Dharma Shastra. Mimamsa deals with how correct conclusions have to be made about Veda mantras. Nyaya, the science of logic. It is a Shastra whose chief instrument of conviction is deduction. The devices used to establish Vedic postulates are called Nyaya. To realize the truth propounded by the Vedas, various devices of analytical inquiry, Vichara Yukti, are detailed by Nyaya Shastra. Puranas. Puranas are Vedas' magnifying glass. A brief idea or a small exposition may not make a lasting impression. The essence of Vedas is conveyed through stories and characters in Puranas. There are a total of 18 Puranas. Dharma Shastras. Finally, they are the road to realize the Vedic goal. It is in man's nature to keep doing something or the other. Therefore, he should learn proper methods of doing things, cleanse his mind, acquire good character and habits and become a Gnani and merge with the Brahman. This is the objective of Dharma Shastras. With this, we have 14 Vidyasthanani, 4 Vedas, 6 Vedangas, Mimamsa, Nyaya Shastra, Puranas and Dharma Shastras form the 14 Vidyasthanani. Now, with Ayurveda, Dhanurveda, Gandharva Veda and Arthashastra as the Upavedas, it becomes totally 18 abodes of knowledge. So far, we have seen how the scriptures are classified into 14 abodes of knowledge. But what is the purpose of all this knowledge? Verses from Vayu Purana tell us that Ishvara wanted this creation to manifest. Hence, he first brought forth the Creator, Lord Brahma, and handed him these abodes of knowledge so that creation can be brought to existence and sustained. The verses from Vayu Purana are like this. First, it enumerates the 14 abodes of knowledge and then goes about adding the 4 Upavedas and making it 18. And later tells the grand reason for the existence or the purpose of this knowledge. Angani Vedas Chatvaro Mimamsa Nyaya Vistaraha पुराणं धर्मशास्त्रं च विद्या ह्येताश्चतुर्दश आयुर्वेदो धनुर्वेदो गान्धर्वश्चेत्यनुक्रमात् अर्थशास्त्रं परं तस्मात् विद्यास्वष्टादश स्मृताः अष्टादशानामेतासां विद्यानां भिन्नवर्त्मनाम् आदिकर्ता कविः साक्षात् शूलपाणिरिति श्रुतिः स हि सर्वजगन्नाथः सिसृक्षुरखिलं जगत् ब्रह्माणं विदधे साक्षात् पुत्रमग्रे सनातनं तस्मै प्रथमपुत्राय ब्रह्मणे विश्वयोनये विद्याश्चेमा ददौ पूर्वं विश्वस्थित्यर्थमीश्वरः it says. For the sustenance of the entire creation, these abodes of knowledge are required. Now that we have some idea about the scriptural corpus, let us look at how to study scriptures. In the traditional system of learning, there are 4 indispensable requisites of a work worth studying. They are called Anubandha Chatushtaya. The 4 Anubandha Chatushtayas are Vishaya, the subject to be dealt with, Prayojanam, benefit to be obtained by studying it, Sambandha, connection between the work and the subject, Adhikari, a qualified student. That is to say, every work is not open to all. There are prerequisite qualifications to enter a certain knowledge domain. For example, to enter the knowledge system of Vedanta, the prerequisites are called Sadhana Chatushtaya. They are as follows: Viveka, Vairagya, Shad Sampat and Mumukshutva. Only when a person has got these 4 things, these sadhana chatushtayas, he is eligible to learn anything about Vedanta. Now let us look at each one of this to understand them better. Viveka. Viveka is broadly often translated as discrimination, but here it is the awareness of the impermanence of the world. Nitya Nitya Vastu Viveka. Awareness that everything in this world is perishable, hence it is anitya. And the only thing that is Nitya is the eternal truth, the Brahman. By realizing the impermanence of this world, if a person becomes uninterested in any sensual, worldly or otherworldly pleasures, it is called Vairagya. This Vairagya is a resultant of Viveka. It is a Viveka Purna Vairagya. It is not out of depression or other emotional states where people dislike worldly existence. Shamadhi Shat Sampatti is the 3rd prerequisite. These are 6 assets of a seeker. They are Shama, Dama, Upariti, Titiksha, Shraddha and Samadhana. Shama means by realizing the flaws in the worldly existence, bringing the mind again and again to rest itself in the Atma is Shama. Diverting the mind towards Atma and Atma Gnana is Shama. Dama is the control of senses. Upariti is a renunciation of activities that are not in line with the purpose of Atma Gnana. Titiksha is forbearance. No matter how many dukkhas you are faced with in this life, displaying forbearance by not crying over them, by not worrying about them is Titiksha. Shraddha is the highest order of faith. Samadhana is not giving mind everything that it asks and gently and constantly resting it on the Atma Tattva is called Samadhana, a samasthiti within. Mumukshutva is the deepest yearning to be free from the bondages imposed by ignorance. It is the intense desire to free oneself by realizing one's true nature. Without having these prerequisites, if one enters the domain of Brahmagnanam, he will either not understand anything or will misunderstand everything. I chose this example of prerequisites needed for scriptural study because many of us are interested in Bhagavad Gita, in Upanishads, and in Vedanta as a philosophy. But if we do not cultivate the prerequisites prescribed for the study of Bhagavad Gita, then we will be failing to understand it. And even if we intellectually understand it, we will be failing to practice it. So, thus you see how intricately woven is the old school way of scripture and scriptural study. In today's modern world, all traditional knowledge are like pearls lying at the bottom of the ocean, unnoticed by the surface dwellers, waiting for the right diver to plunge in and get them. If through this session you have understood the greatness, depth, vastness, and importance of Bharatiya Jnana Parampara, the traditional system of our knowledge base, and at least one of you, if not every one of you, is inspired to pursue it, then this session has fulfilled its purpose. From the next session on, we will be directly getting into different dharma vicharas that are sourced from this repository of traditional knowledge. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.